who stopped the killing of other Jews by tackling the gunmen. So that showed the world. He wasn't with that. So it has nothing to do with Islam. I've sat and talked with some of them when I was in Dallas, Texas. There was a guy there, and he was wanting to go burn down the Barnes and Noble's bookstores.
Rabbi meets an imam, and they warmly smile at one another and embrace one another. Well, that sentence describes my friendship and my interreligious collaboration with our guest, Imam Yahya Abdullah. As you'll discover momentarily, Imam Abdullah is an absolute gem. He's a shining light in the lives of his students, his community, his colleagues, his friend. He's a tireless advocate for what the world needs right now. For faith, for interfaith connection, for repairing a fractured world. I have no doubt that you will gain a lot of insight from this podcast conversation. As always, we encourage you to share the message with other people who will benefit and take interest in it. Imam Yahya Abdullah, I'm so glad to share this episode. It's a pleasure to see you. I think you and we were meant to meet during COVID because there was a museum opening or an event at a museum in Dallas, and I was meant to be one of the speakers. You were as well. I didn't get there during COVID, but I remember the first time I met you through Rabbi Ben-Pered was when we both were speakers participants in a conference called Scriptural Resources for Peace.
Yes.
And I learned a lot from you the first time we did it and the second time. And since then, you and I are on the board of the Center for Interreligious Understanding, so I've gain my knowledge of you and always my respect for you. You're in Jacksonville. Thank you very much. You're in Jacksonville, Florida. What's the Muslim community like there in terms of statistics and in terms of numbers and commitments, let's say, and involvement, engagement?
Florida as a state has approximately about 125,000 Muslims throughout the state. And in Jacksonville, this is North Florida. So North Florida has less of a population. I would venture to say maybe 20, 30,000 Muslims, maybe, between North and Central Florida. The majority of the Muslims in Florida are in the South, i.e. Miami, Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, and in the Central Florida, Tampa, St. Petersburg, Clearwater area. In fact, I would say Orlando also. So there's a large population of Muslims in the Orlando area. So the further central and south you go from northeast Florida, which is Jacksonville, is where you find more population of Muslims. And in the community that I'm a part of here in Jacksonville, we're the oldest community, the first community, the African-American Muslim community in Jacksonville, Florida, the oldest established community of Muslims before the immigrant community started moving in. And we were the first mosque, the Jacksonville Masjid of Al-Islam, where I was the imam back in 1977, where I got my start there. So the brothers who were from Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt, they used to come to the mosque where I was at. And then later on, as they tend to do, they opened businesses, and many of them were lawyers, doctors, engineers. And with the visa programs in those days, back in the 70s, where the United States of America, most of the states were inviting professionals from other parts of the Muslim world to come to Florida, Texas, California, Georgia, New York, mainly migrants that are very highly educated with skill sets. And that's what gave birth and rise to the existing present community of Muslims in Jacksonville. Many of the medical facilities, Jacksonville is a very strong medical facility town. University of Health, Baptist Health, Mayo Clinic is here, one of three places. Rochester, Minnesota, I think Scottsdale, Arizona, and Jacksonville, Florida, for the Mayo Clinic. So you have a lot of Muslim doctors who have residency at Baptist, St. Vincent's, the University of Health, and also the Mayo Clinic. And so very diverse population of Muslims in Jacksonville, Florida.
What's talking about at the end of the day, you and I know that within communities there are bumpy human beings with all of our idiosyncrasies and prejudices and backgrounds and needs. How does that single faith but multinational, multicultural community work? What is it? What really happens on the ground with these immigrants coming in, whether they're Arabic speaking by birth or learned to pray in Arabic, American Muslims? How does that work in an American Muslim community?
Well, from a religious standpoint, we're basically one community. The Quran says,
Sunni,
min nafsin wahida, and that expands to mankind, as you know, one humanity, one mankind, one human soul. And the focal point of al-Islam, we worship the same. Now, there are some variations depending on which part of the Muslim world. As you well know, from Iran or Iraq, you're talking about Shia Muslims. From Africa, it depends on whether you're in West Africa, Central Africa, or East Africa, different schools of thoughts there. But, and I have friends, of course, obviously, and attend some of the masjids that are not African-American masjids. I have a very good relationship with the Turkish community, the community on St. John's Bluff called Islamic Center of Northeast Florida. A big mosque, that's the biggest mosque in Jacksonville, mainly a mixture of immigrant Muslims from Afghanistan, from Malaysia, from Indonesia, from Pakistan, some brothers from Senegal, Nigeria. So it's a very eclectic gathering of Muslims there. And we pray together during the sacred month of Ramadan. We all tend to fellowship with each other, breaking fasts, making prayers, having dinners together, sharing with each other, visiting different mosques. So we have that. Now, from the cultural standpoint, it's more of an adjustment for them in the United States of America than it is for us because, well, I'm an American. We're American citizens. So it's a very different kind of transition. Now, many of their children, they're opening schools here. The number for the size of the Muslim community in Jacksonville, you have a number of Islamic educational institutions for the small numbers of Muslims in the city of Jacksonville, Florida. Many of their young children and young students, I'm talking about those who are born in Jacksonville, they don't know Pakistan. They don't know Iran. They don't know Iraq. They know Jacksonville, Florida, United States of America. So for them, their parents are migrants, not them. Yeah. Their grandparents are migrants. They have friends at the high schools, colleges, the universities, just like we do as any citizen of the United States of America, because they are natural citizens of America. And so for them, it's like trying to navigate two worlds. And not to mention I don't have to tell you what I consider to be extreme view and approach of dealing with immigration right now. Is kind of like out of control and inhumane in some respects. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking about the culture and thinking, from my own experience, there are people who say, well, our community, our way of praying, our accent of prayer is legitimate because I came from an Arab-speaking world, let's say. And these Americans, they're Muslims as I am, but we do it in a way that's a little more correct, higher level. I don't know. Is there that kind of thinking within the community that divides it in any way, or are people generally just embracing?
Well, no, because it doesn't matter where you came from, because now here's an interesting data point. The largest population of Muslims are not Arabs.
Right.
The largest population of Muslims are Indonesian. There's 213 million Muslims in Indonesia. Right. You only have 25 million people, I believe, in Saudi Arabia, or the Arab, what they call the Hijaz, the Arabian area, the UAE, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, those countries. So the great majority of Muslims are in Asia.
Yeah.
And they speak Arabic when it comes to prayer. Because all of us, including myself, I'm a teacher of Arabic, but all Muslims, I don't care which country you live in, which part of the world you're in, what unites us, I'm glad you raised that, because what unites us, and I'm sure it's true in the Jewish tradition, is we have to worship in the language of the Quran, our prayers, or Quranic prayers, which are Arabic. So I don't care if you're from Pakistan, Malaysia, Indonesia, Bermuda, Jacksonville, Dallas, Texas, New York, Sydney, Australia, France, Germany, every mosque you walk into, I was in Guangzhou, China, Yiwu, China. It didn't matter where you go at. Tanzania, where was that? In Zanzibar. And I walk into the mosque. Everybody prays in the same language.
Yeah. I've had the same experience, whether it's in Azerbaijan or in Tanzania, in Kenya, wherever it is in the world, Jews are praying in Hebrew. However, in America particularly, since that's my most familiar experience outside of Israel, there is a lot of reformation of the prayer book. So you'll have people saying, look, my parents understood this language, or my grandfather did. My parents prayed in it, but I'm alienated by it or from it. So I'm going to say certain prayers in Hebrew, but then we're going to integrate English into the prayer service. In the same way that the Catholic Church went through the same thing. They had the Latin Mass, and then they said we need to translate it, make it more relevant, or at least integrate more of the local language. Is that happening in Islam as well?
No.
Okay.
No, you can't. Now, for what's allowed, I teach an Arabic class on Sundays, and I've been teaching Arabic classes for 30, 40 years maybe. For our formal, what we call salat, S-A-L-A-T, formal salat, so we make a distinction. There's what we call dua, supplication, prayers in general, and such as your prayers before you eat, the prayers before you go to bed. These are the Bismillah, with God's name. But for our, what is known, the language would be canonical 5 daily prayers. All of those salats, which includes the standing up, the formal prayer, the prostration, the bowing, must be done in Arabic across the globe. So every worshiper in Al-Islam will become a Muslim. As a matter of fact, the steps to becoming a Muslim, the first step is to say, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadan Rasulullah. And more specifically, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. I bear witness that there's nothing worthy of worship except God, one God. And I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of God. So that's called the creed, the kalimatain or the kalima or creed. The next step, or the next thing that the Muslims do out of the 5 pillars of Islam, the second one is salat. So that new member must immediately begin to learn how to pray properly in Quranic Arabic. So we have prayer books to answer the question. And those prayer books have pictures, Arabic language, transliteration, and we encourage them to work with a teacher in the mosque here with me in Jacksonville. We have classes for them. But we were talking about this technology earlier. Now you can go online and AI, or what I call shake Google, and you can go online and learn the prayers online at your convenience in the comfort of your own home.
In your time zone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In your time zone. So every Muslim all over the globe, and this is what unites us, regardless of the culture, regardless of the politics, regardless of the schools of thoughts. I can go anywhere in the Muslim world, walk into a mosque. Now, there's an exception to this because I was in Tanzania. And when the call to prayer was made, I was in an office. I was in a business office. And I said to the African brother there, we were in Dar es Salaam, I said, oh, I hear the call to prayer. I want to go to the mosque and pray. And he said, okay, there's a mosque across the street from the office. So when we get there, when the person, well, before we started praying, I heard the person add something to the call to prayer that is not typical for Muslims around the world. So when I heard him add it, I said to my associate, who's African brother in Tanzania, I said, why did he just say that in the call to prayer, the adhan it's called? He said, oh, he's Ismaili Muslim. I said, okay, I'm not Ismaili Muslim. I'm a Muslim. So you all would call me a Sunni. I just call myself a Muslim. That's what the Quran says, you're a Muslim. So I said, can you take me to the mosque where they are not Ismaili Muslims? I don't mean any disrespect, but I'm not used to hearing that. I'm not used to praying that. So that distinction depending on those Shiite Muslims, Ismaili Muslims. So you will find that, but generally speaking throughout the world, yeah.
Sorry, you just struck my thought. You're saying sons of Ishmael.
What they call them, Ismaili Muslims.
Yeah, descendants of Ismail.
Ismail, yes.
Aren't all Muslims presumed to be descendants of Ismail?
Exactly. That's what I said. Yeah. I was like, so how did you all just form a separate sect? Yeah. I can't participate in that.
Is out on principle, or it's just uncomfortable because it's a different prayer book? It's a different salat.
On principle. And I was at a conference once in Dallas, big conference at the DFW airport.
Yeah. And
I have friends from Iran, Qom, and they were having a conference. So they invited me to come to the conference. Brothers there, of course. Yes. So I went to the conference and it was prayer time. Mm-hmm. Now I know that they're Shia Muslims because one of our Arabic teachers that taught in our school that we actually hired when I was living in Dallas for the elementary school, Clap Muhammad school system there, 1983-84, was a very scholarly, she was, of course, Arabic lady, and she went to the university. She was a professor at the University of Baghdad. So when she came to apply for the job in Dallas, this was in the 80s, and my children were going to school and the babies, I said, listen, she said, Imam, I am Shia Muslim. I said, listen, I don't have a problem with that. As far as I'm concerned, we're Muslims. I don't want you teaching Shiaism in our school. We're hiring you to teach Arabic. That's your language. All of the books that before you teach the students, bring me the books, let me read the books, and I will approve them. She said, I have no problem with that. She was one of the best Arabic teachers we ever had in our school. Really? All the children love her. Yeah, she was Shiite.
Yeah.
So, of course, I had my other Muslim brothers, Sunni brothers, and they, oh, Imam, Pakistani, yeah, she's Shiite. I said, she told me that up front, but she's not teaching Shiaism. She's teaching Arabic. That's what we need. So I'm at the conference at the DFW airport one year, and it was prayer time. So now I know these brothers are Shia Muslims. So I stand up in the line. I hear the call to prayer. They included Ali, may Allah be pleased with him, the son-in-law and cousin of Prophet Muhammad, praise and peace be upon the Prophet. So when I heard this, I stepped to the side, no disrespect to them, and I made my prayers independently. They respected it, didn't have a problem. And then when we finished our prayers, we reconvened for the conference.
Interesting. When you talk about Shiaism as an ism, a movement, what does it entail that's different from normative Islam, or I'll call it Sunni Islam?
It depends on which country you're in. For example, Iraq, where our professor was from, Iran, where these brothers were from, my friends, and let's see, I could delicately say this, extremism, mysticism, mysteries, more, and I actually said this to one of the scholars. He allowed me. I offered him my advice when he was there in Dallas, and I was in one of the workshops, and they were talking about Imam Ali, Hussein and Hassan, the grandsons of Prophet Muhammad. And so I rarely heard anything about Prophet Muhammad. So I'm sitting there listening to this, and they put more emphasis, to answer your question, they put more emphasis on Ali. He should have been the caliph as opposed to Abu Bakr, because he was a blood relative of Muhammad the Prophet, married to his daughter Fatima. So, but the Quran, and they know this, the learned ones, this is political. Because in Islamic history, there were battles between Aisha's army and Ali's army. You're familiar with this history?
Yes.
Because of politics. They wanted, and they thought, now this is Arab culture, they thought that the person who should be the first caliph was the one with the bloodline to the prophet, which was Ali. But the Quran says Muhammad is not the father of any of your men. His sons passed. So he didn't leave anybody to inherit the prophethood. But that's how the Shiites think. And so when I was at the conference and I'm hearing this, so I had the opportunity to speak with one of the scholars from Iran. And I told him I enjoyed the presentation, which I did. I said, do you mind if I offer my humble advice? Because some of the brothers introduced me. This is Imam Yahya from Dallas, Texas. He's our friend, so-and-so. He said, yes, please. What are your advice, your suggestions? I said, listen, first let me ask you a question. I said, if Imam Ali, God rest his soul, and he later became the caliph, the fourth one, I said, if he was alive today, would he encourage you to follow him or Muhammad the Prophet? And he paused. He said, Prophet Muhammad. I said, if his sons, the Prophet's grandsons, Hussein and Hassan, were living, would they say follow them, their father, or their grandfather, Muhammad the Prophet? They said Prophet Muhammad. I said, so my advice is admonish and remind your listeners to give more attention to the direction and instructions of Muhammad the Prophet than Ali and his grandchildren. And they accepted that.
I had an interesting experience a number of times in one particular mosque, the Haydar Aliyev Mosque in Baku in Azerbaijan.
Okay.
Extraordinary mosque, structurally beautiful, architecturally. And something that was amazing to me there was they are intent on multiculturalism, not just as a platitude, but really living that out, of real respect, reverence for other faiths within the community of Azerbaijan. And within Islam, I can't remember the statistics right now, but it's obviously a Muslim majority country. This being the primary mosque, there is a Sunni imam and a Shiite imam, and they work together, and they're leading services together and alternating on Fridays, and that's part of their message of coexistence. I don't know how common that is. I just wonder how beautiful, how useful it is in your mind, and whether it's symbolism that has value. What's your sense of that?
That's the way it should be. And see, that's what I was saying. It's political. The start of the Shiaism was driven by politics, not religion. It was driven by the need for power, empire building, and wars. Who's going to be the leader? Who's going to be in charge? This is politics. So to hear that these two imams and two leaders understand that, obviously they do, and decide to work to bring their two communities together, wonderful. That's the way it should be.
Yeah. Going to the politics of today and the divisiveness and the dangerous politics within religious communities, of course, I'm thinking about what happened in Australia to the Jews on the first night of Hanukkah.
Very unfortunate.
Yeah, horrifically. And if that was all, it would be one thing. But since then, there have been marches in the streets of Muslims chanting, correct me if I'm wrong in what I'm saying, they're saying Khaybar to the Jews, meaning recalling a battle where Jews were slaughtered in ancient days.
Khaybar. Yeah.
Khaybar?
Khaybar.
Yeah. So
without a favor.
how does Islam deal with that?
Well, again, and you're very well informed, my dear friend, so you know these things. It's less, in my humble opinion, it's less about religion.
Of course it is.
Versus most of these people don't know the Quran.
Right.
They don't study the Quran. They're Muslims through generations. It's almost like in the United States of America. I don't mean any offense to Christian brothers and sisters, because I grew up in the Baptist church and my father was a Baptist minister, God rest his soul, before I converted to Islam. But if you ask me to explain to you what baptism was before I became a student of the Bible, I didn't have a clue. It's what my father did.
Yeah.
And I recall when I became a Muslim and I spoke to my father. He wasn't living with us. We were raised by a single mother here, 7 children. I'm the oldest of 7 in Jacksonville, Florida. We always knew where our father was at. So I had a conversation with him once, gave him a copy of the Quran. He was a Christian Baptist minister. He says to me, he says, son, listen, I can't criticize you for converting to Islam. He said, because to be honest with you, I've been a Baptist all my life and I've been preaching the Bible and I don't understand it. Mm-hmm. Now, this is what my father said. So most Christians in America, in my generation, I'm a Baptist because my father was a Baptist. Yeah. Well, that's the way it is for many Muslims. I'm a Muslim because my father was a Muslim. I'm a Muslim because my grandfather was. But to study, there's a difference between being a Muslim and studying and knowing what Al-Islam is. Yeah. There's a difference between being a Jew and knowing what Judaism is. Of course. There's a difference between being a Christian and knowing what Christian history and Christianity is. So when we see these things, most of it is emotionalism, reactionary. It's unfortunate. Reactionary, what happened in Bondi Beach, and my hearts went out to them, and we prayed for them in the mosque here in Jacksonville, Florida, and we applauded Ahmed el-Ahmed, the Muslim brother who stopped the killing of other Jews by tackling the gunman. So that showed the world. He wasn't with that. So it has nothing to do with Islam. It has to do with the individuals who are extreme, and they take it upon themselves. I've sat and talked with some of them when I was in Dallas, Texas. I'll never forget one time I was visiting an Arab mosque in Dallas, and there was a guy there, and he was wanting to go carry out some acts of terror. So the imam told me I need to talk with him. This is at least 20, 25 years ago. And I said, sure, I'll sit and talk with him. He was from overseas. I can't recall which country. And I spent 1 hour talking to him, Rabbi Ron. And I told him, I said, listen, brother, Allah says in the Quran, herald truth. It had to deal with the Salman Rushdie book or something back in those days. Offensive. So I told him, I said, well, you can't go burn down. He wanted to burn down the Barnes and Noble's bookstores in downtown Dallas. And I said, no, you can't do that. I said, the Quran said, he was a college student, fight truth or fight falsehood with truth. I said, so you know what it'd be better for you to do? You're a college student, put together some leaflets and some flyers, put the verses, 2 or 3 verses of the Quran, and pass them out to the students at the college campus. You're safe. You're not violating their religion. I said, because I'm a Muslim. And if you go downtown Dallas, Texas, I have family that live in Dallas. I don't know if any of them be at their bookstore. I can't let you out of this mosque until I change your mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'll know to change his mind.
We're all dealing with the fear of extremism, all different forms of extremism. We're feeling it. We're feeling the division in families and in communities and in the world. One of the things I'm seeing, there's already a shift in religion in America, generational shift. And I was talking to some evangelicals about this, the concern that they were well-versed in the Bible, meaning these are people in their 50s and 60s, let's say, the parents of. They know their Bible. They can quote and read and study and interpret, but their kids don't have that knowledge. No. And their concern is about their kids. And their concern is that their kids, not necessarily about extremism necessarily, but more political extremism or moving away from tenets that have been important to Christians in America, because they're no longer basing them in any grounding in text. They're saying, I believe, therefore I'm a Christian, meaning I believe that I'm saved by Jesus, but they're not building that on a foundation of knowledge, of understanding the Bible. And that's a challenge.
It's the same for Muslims. It's the exact same thing. And as you get further down the lines, generational, and they get away from the text, from the Quran, from the Torah, from the Bible, and our religious scriptures, and then they function mainly from politics and also the culture. The cultural influences that are powerful, and it's accelerated now with AI, artificial intelligence, and all of these platforms and all of these apps. So there's a mixture of confusion for these young people. And I say to my grandchildren all the time, I tell them, I say, I pray for you all, because you're from a different generation. You have different challenges. When I was growing up, I didn't have TikTok and WhatsApp, and we didn't have all of this. I said, we didn't have a remote for the TV. So,
we ran up and did this till our dad said stop.
I said, so I understand you live in a fast-paced technological environment and a culture in a world that don't allow you time to slow down and use your critical thinking skills. Now, that's the challenge for us as parents and teachers and religiously. It's a challenge.
You've done a lot of work with men. What are you learning that's relevant to us right now? What are the important lessons? And I say this to someone often, more than one person. I say to myself, when I see the world, and I was talking to a couple of Muslim sisters, and I said, the world is in the shape it's in my, again, humble opinion, because of the egos of my species, the men, not the women. Right.
And I said, we need your help, the women. I said, we need you were our first teachers. Our mothers were our first teachers. You raised us, you taught us, you trained us. I said, but the world is in the shape it's in because of the egos of men, not the egos of women. So we need
100% echo what you're saying.
Yeah, we need more of this nurturing qualities, and they don't have to be in the politics. But it's good to see more women in politics, more women in business, more women involved in culture, because they are our mothers. They were our first teachers. And the men are ego-driven. So I often tell people, I say, I don't know. I don't have the data because I'm not putting it in a body. I say, but I believe Satan is a male more than it is a female.
Yeah.
Principle, egotism.
Right.
So that's what I find more with my species. So when I'm talking to my sons or I'm talking to young men, I'm telling them, look, you have got to get control of your ego. Now, back to that brings me to something that you mentioned earlier about this anti-Semitism. You didn't use the language, or Islamophobia, or whatever it is, hatred and violence and all this. Muhammad the Prophet, prayers and peace be upon him, on one of these battles. Now, and I always like to remind my Jewish friends and Christian friends that the greatest enemies in number and force against Muhammad the Prophet during his lifetime were not Jews, were not Christians, they were Arabs, his own people. Okay, that's throughout his history. He fought more his own people. It was not Jews that drove him from Mecca. It was not Christians that drove him from Mecca. It was Arabs, his own people. Okay. When they came from one of the battles, physical war, Muhammad the Prophet said to his soldiers, you have just returned from this word, taken out of context, jihad. He said, you have just returned from jihad al-saghir, the small jihad. Now, they were fighting on the battlefield, war. He said, that's the small jihad struggle. To begin jihad al-akbar, the greater jihad. So they were puzzled. What do you mean, Muhammad? We were lost out some companions. We lost lives on the battlefields. He said, yes, I'm aware of that. He said, but the greatest jihad is not for killing another soldier fighting on the battlefield. He said, that's not the greatest struggle for man. He said, the greatest jihad is for the conquest of your own soul, your own nafs, your own egos.
Yeah.
That's the challenge for man.
Yeah, there's a Talmudic quote, and I'm forgetting the source right now, but it says essentially, God doesn't want us to be masters of each other. God wants us to master ourselves.
That's it.
And every great wisdom tradition is trying to get that through to men and women, just to human beings, to try to understand that the greatest story that we're writing is our self-mastery. Yeah. And that's what the world needs of us. Absolutely.
And the first address that we get is ourselves. The first home we live in is a home of ourselves. And these egos, though, make folk think that we should listen to them. They are the dominant spirit, the dominant mindset. Nope. In our religion, we're taught, and I'm sure in Judaism, that we're all the children of Adam.
Of course.
And the prophet said, Adam min turab, that Adam came from the dust.
Right.
So we're brothers of the same dirt.
Yeah, we have a tradition that says the reason that we have Adam and Eve and not 5 parents or 8 is that none of us will say we're descendants of greater parents than the other. We all come from that oneness, which I love. And I imagine a world in which you and I could look at each other and say, there's my cousin, if not my brother. Yeah, and then absolutely. How do I take care of that person? There's a Buddhist tradition that I see echoed in Judaism as well. I don't know which came first. It's irrelevant. Wisdom's wisdom. But it's essentially saying that when we do harm to another, we're doing harm to ourselves. So why would we do harm to another? And there's a Jewish teaching that says, if the butcher, let's say, if I cut my left hand with the knife from my right hand by accident, should I retaliate by taking the knife in the left hand and cutting that other hand? You know, the futility of what we're doing. And if we can rise our consciousness to the realization of real oneness that all of our religions are teaching and repeating and repeating and repeating, we'll get that the other in our society is just an aspect of us. We're all part of this aspect of holy oneness.
And to that, to pick up on where you are going, that same theme, and I think we might have shared this in the previous conversation we had, but one of the most famous verses in the Quran for the unity and cooperation and collaboration of mankind on this earth, chapter 49, verse 13, one of the famous, that says, "O you who believe, ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O mankind, ya ayyuhannas, pardon me, O mankind, verily we have made you of a pair of a male and a female, and created you and made you, shu'uban wa qaba'ila lita'arafu, into various nations, different tribes, in order that you might get to know one another, not that you may hate and despise one another."
Can you say that again? Because we had a glitch in the sound. Can you repeat the translation?
Yes, chapter 49, verse 13. O mankind, we have made you of the pairing of a single parent, male and female, and made you into different nations and tribes, shu'uban wa qaba'ila, in order that you might, lita'arafu, get to know one another, not hate and despise one another. Really, God is aware of everything you do. So that chapter and verse for Muslims, everybody all over the world, we're told we were made into these various groups, these various ethnicities, various nations, various societies, so we can get to know one another, learn from each other. And that word lita'arafu There's a ritual during the Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca, where the pilgrims go and they go to the site, the plains of Arafat. And Arafat literally means to know, to be informed. And on Arafat, as a part of the concluding ritual for the Hajj, the pilgrimage, there you find people from all over the world, and we have the opportunity to interact with our fellow men and fellow brothers across the globe of every different nationality you can think of. But this expands out to different religious communities, not just Muslims, that God has made us different so we can benefit from each other. We can learn from each other's customs, traditions, cultures. We can learn. It expands our knowledge base in our minds, not to use it to beat each other across the head, batter each other, and hate each other. No, but again, man and his ego, influenced by what we call in Islam, shaitan, Satan, or the devil.
Another guest talked to me about his time in solitary confinement, 3 years. We talked about this before we recorded. And one of the things that I got from him was that he got absolute deafening silence for most of 3 years, except when he talked to a guard when he was handing him a tray of food. Otherwise, he was left to his own mind. And then he started reading and really transforming himself. But I don't think any of us need that kind of solitude. We know there's a danger in solitude, but there's also breath, a space that we need in our lives that I think prayer gives us, that I think religious life mandates, even in the Sabbath ideas in Judaism that says, you have to turn this off. It's not a choice because God knew your nature before you had your nature, and you're going to need to turn off distractions to find God, to find yourself, to find family, relationship, soulfulness, reflection. We're in a very noisy era. Your grandkids and mine are being raised with so much noise in the background of their lives and in the foreground. That concerns me. It concerns me about reflection. Say again?
Yeah. That's the culture influence that I referenced earlier, all the noise.
The noise. It's not just the noise of ideas. It's the noise of noise. It's the noise of not having, like in music, you have rests between the notes. That's what makes the shape of the music. We have to have those inhalations before the singer sings again. And in traditional communities like yours and mine, they're built in. They're cyclical, they're normative. But in a secular society that doesn't have any of that built in, mandated, or even strongly advised, there can be an endless cacophony, endless sound, and that concerns me.
Yeah. And I am, like I'm sure you are too, even though I have the concern because we're children and grandchildren, I'm also encouraged that they are beginning to realize that. That they need to disconnect. Okay. And I was, as a metaphor, I was talking to one of my, I don't know if it was one of my grandsons or granddaughters, and they were sounding a little drained in their spirit. And I said, listen, so I used the phone as an example. I said, okay, you have that cell phone. Yes. When the power is going out on the cell phone, what do you have to do? Well, I have to go charge it, plug it up. I said, exactly. So when your soul is being drained, you have to plug it into the power source. And it's not those sockets on the wall. It's prayer. It's scripture. It's reflection. You have to power up. God created your soul. He knows what is needed for that soul to stay energized. So you need to cut the device off and plug into the real power source for your soul and your mind. They understood it.
Yeah, that's a great way to explain it. I think about the fact that these phones, that aren't really phones, that's the least of what it does. If you keep recharging and going on a little power and recharging, going on a little power and never giving it time to fully charge, its ultimate life is shortened and depleted. There's a lesson to be learned from that too. You and I know each other through one of the great mentors of our lives, Rabbi Jack Ben Parad. And anywhere I've gone in the world, and the people I've met, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, regardless, everybody speaks with reverence about him. Anywhere I've been, people talk about him, and you just see true reverence for his knowledge and his wisdom and his work, his body of work, and the impact that he's had, and his soulfulness and his good heart. What have you learned from him? What have been some of the lessons you've learned from him specific to interfaith, interreligious dialogue?
Genuineness, sincerity. I met him when I was in Dallas in the 80s, the early 80s, when he was at Temple Emmanuel. And immediately his sharp intellect comes across automatically. And his wit, his philosophy and his philosophical viewpoint and everything. But beyond his amazing intellect is his humanity.
Yes.
You feel it genuinely. You know, his spirit exudes faith. It exudes love. It exudes compassion. It exudes respect for his fellow man. Nothing. I never got anything from him that even indicated anything fake or phony. He was putting on airs to get up. No. Rabbi Jack Ben Parad has been as genuine in the 80s when I met him to this day, and I love him as a brother.
Yeah. Amen.
And to be honest, I feel more comfortable, and this goes to what we were talking about earlier. I felt more comfortable around him in his presence than I did around some people who were calling themselves Muslims. So because it's not what you call yourself, it's what you are inherently.
Yeah, I share your view of him. Admiration and love for him and gratitude for him. He's really taught me a lot. And one of the things he's taught me is never think you've learned enough. Keep reading, keep learning, stay in dialogue. The stay in dialogue piece, he's a great advocate of humble, curious dialogue, educated, humble, curious listening and dialogue, and of engaging even when, and maybe especially when there's acrimony, when there's disagreement. That's when we need more of the dialogue. How do you see that at play, interreligious dialogue in the world today? It's
needed. Yeah. As you're saying, it's needed. So we can foster understanding. And if we foster, have more discussions and dialogues, again, back to the verse that I read, chapter 49 and 13 of the Quran. God made us different so we can learn from each other. Well, we're not going to learn from each other if we isolate ourselves from each other. I'm afraid to. And learning from each other don't mean that I have to agree on everything you say or you agree with everything. We don't do that at home with the family and the children. And my 4 children, they're 4 different personalities, the three boys and the girl. And when they were growing up, my only girl, she knew she was daddy's heart. And she could be mischievous with her brothers, and she could come run to daddy, and it didn't make any difference what those guys had to say. This is my daughter, and you don't touch her. So I could see this division in my own household with our children. They are not all the same, even though they come from the same 2 parents. They have different personalities. They don't see things exactly the same in the exact same household. So if that's true for our homes, how much more will that be true in the broader culture, the broader society? So we have to grow up and mature as human beings. And the more knowledge we get, the more I learn about Judaism, the more I learned about Christianity. Well, I grew up in the Baptist church, but then I learned there were the Methodists. Then I learned there were the Catholics. I didn't have that information when I was growing up. And there are different perspectives on Christianity. And then when I was in Dallas with Rabbi Jack Ben Parad, then I learned more about the Reform Judaism. I learned about Orthodox Judaism. I learned about a conservative Judaism. And I went to these various different synagogues and temples, and I learned different aspects of Judaism that I didn't know before. And we would have dialogues and discussions. And then we would invite the Turkish Muslims. We would invite the Muslims who were Shia. And then we learned more from each other. And some of the Ismailis were a part of the Thanksgiving Square that we had in Dallas, Texas. So we had a center, and it's still there where I was at for Kindness Week last November. it's still there, and it represents a tangible facility and a place in Dallas, Texas. And to this date, I haven't seen any place like that in the United States of America, that sits in the heart of downtown in the city center, where all of the religious community leaders can come together, break bread together, literally, and share common ideas, go back to our various communities, and share what we learned from each other. And that's the way we can't be afraid of each other. And don't be afraid to disagree. And what's the old saying? We can disagree without being disagreeable.
Yeah, that's right.
Same thing with the wife and the husband. Disagree without being disagreeable.
Yeah, maybe that should be the last word. Good counseling. I just want to thank you. It's always a chance to learn from you when I'm with you. It's really a great opportunity.
It's mutual. I learn a lot from you also. It's mutual. That's what we're talking about. It's my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. I hope to see you in person. I don't know where that's going to be. Dallas, Jacksonville, Los Angeles, somewhere in the world.
Yes. God willing.
May God bless you. This year, 2026, may be a year of blessing for you, your family, your community, and the good work that you're doing.
Same to you, my dear friend. Same to you.
Thank you. Take care.
You too. Shalom.
Salam.
This season is produced and edited by Jonah Lee Paz. Content editing by Bronwyn Lee Paz. Digital marketing by Notebook Media. The Meaning Mindset is hosted by Rabbi Ron Lee Paz. Find us wherever you find your podcasts.